The moment the human girl lifted her eyes, the laughter died. It didn't fade. It didn't soften. It stopped, like a switch had been cut. Every alien cadet in the room felt it at the same time, a strange pressure in the air, the uncomfortable feeling that something irreversible had just begun. No one understood why yet. They would. The Galactic Vanguard Academy was famous for producing heroes. Or at least, that's what the holobanners said. In reality, it produced survivors, sharp, competitive, and cruel when weakness appeared. Species from 100 systems trained there, all taught the same lesson in different ways. Only the strong mattered. Zyron Valtek sat in the fourth row, his plated fingers drumming nervously against his datapad. He was a Kashari, scaled and lean, built for speed rather than power. Not weak. Not impressive. Just average. Average was dangerous at the academy. The combat theory hall curved downward toward a central arena, its floor made of adaptive matter that could turn into anything: deserts, war zones, zero-gravity fields. Rows of cadets filled the seats, chattering in dozens of accents and tones. That chatter changed when the doors opened. She walked in. Not glided. Not floated. Not stalked. She walked. 2 legs. 2 arms. No visible armor plates. No claws. No natural weapons. Her uniform fit slightly loose, as if it hadn't been designed with her body in mind. A human. Zyron felt the shift ripple through the room before anyone spoke. Humans were new to the wider galaxy. Recently contacted. Recently tolerated. Recently underestimated. Someone snorted. Someone laughed. Then several did. "Well, I'll be crushed by a moon," said Drax Mole, loud and proud. He was a Bracket, tall, thick-limbed, with a ridged skull and a reputation for breaking training equipment. They actually sent one. The human ignored him and took a seat near the front. That only made it worse. "Oh, come on," Drax continued, rising halfway from his seat. "Look at her. No armor ridges. No muscle density. How does something like that survive a light breeze, let alone combat training?" A few cadets laughed harder. Zyron didn't. He watched the human carefully. Most newcomers showed fear on their first day. Some tried to hide it. Some overcompensated with bravado. She did none of that. She sat calmly, pulled out her datapad, and began reviewing the lesson outline as if she belonged there. That unsettled him. "Human," Drax called out. "You know where you are, right? This isn't some soft-core diplomacy school." She didn't look up. A few cadets exchanged amused glances. "Maybe she doesn't understand Galactic Common," someone whispered. "I understand," the human said. Her voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. She looked up slowly, meeting Drax's eyes with an expression Zyron couldn't quite name. Not fear. Not anger. Assessment. "I understand exactly where I am." A pause followed. Not long, but long enough. Drax grinned, showing blunt, crushing teeth. "Good. Then you'll understand when I say this." He straightened fully now, towering over her even from several rows away. "You don't belong." Zyron felt his throat tighten. He'd seen this before. A newcomer singled out. Tested. Broken, sometimes socially, sometimes physically. The instructors usually allowed it, unofficially. Pressure built warriors. The human tilted her head slightly. "That's an opinion," she said. The calmness of her reply drew a few surprised murmurs. Drax laughed, genuinely amused. "Oh, this will be fun." The doors hissed again. Instructor Kayla Thrine entered. The room snapped to attention instantly. Thrine was a Varex, massive, stone-skinned, his eyes glowing faintly amber beneath a heavy brow. Scars crossed his body in patterns that told stories no one dared ask about. "Sit," he growled. Everyone did. His gaze swept the room, lingering for a half-second longer on the human. Something unreadable passed through his expression. "Today," Thrine said, "we assess practical dominance under pressure." Groans rippled through the hall. "Pair-based evaluations," he continued. 3 adaptive trials. Strength. Control. Decision-making. Zyron felt his scales prickle. Pair trials were dangerous. You were judged not only on your own performance, but on how you affected your partner. Before Thryne could finish, Drax stepped forward. "Instructor," he said loudly, "I volunteer to face the human." The word face carried a sharp edge. Silence followed. Thryne studied Drax for a long moment. "You are certain?" "Completely." Zyron glanced at the human. She hadn't moved. Hadn't flinched. She simply stood. "I accept," she said. 2 words. No hesitation. A few cadets leaned forward now, interest replacing mockery. Zyron felt a knot form in his chest. This was a terrible idea. Drax Mole was one of the strongest cadets in the academy. Facing him on day 1 wasn't a challenge, it was a statement. And statements had consequences. The arena floor shifted, panels sliding apart as the space expanded into a training environment of towering platforms and shifting gravity zones. Trial 1, Thryne announced. Mobility under instability. Drax cracked his knuckles, all 4 of them, the sound echoing sharply. "This ends fast," he muttered. Zyron noticed something strange. The human closed her eyes. Just for a moment. Not in prayer. Not in fear. Focus. Drax launched forward when the signal sounded, muscles powering him across the first platform as gravity tilted violently. He adapted instantly, leaping, gripping, hauling himself upward with practiced ease. Cheers followed his movement. He was brilliant. There was no denying it. Then the human moved. Not fast. Not slow. Correct. She didn't fight the gravity shifts. She anticipated them. When the floor tilted, she leaned into it before it happened. When a platform vanished, she was already airborne. Zyron's mouth went dry. This wasn't strength. It was understanding. She reached the midpoint before Drax realized she was ahead. That was when he snarled and pushed harder. And that was when the room began to change. The cheers faded. The laughter vanished. One by one, cadets stopped speaking as the human cleared obstacles that should have stopped her cold. When she landed on the final platform, her time flashed above the arena. Lower than Drax's. For a heartbeat, no one breathed. Drax stared at the display, then at her. "Run it again," he snapped. "The system's wrong." "The system is never wrong," Thryne said coldly. The silence deepened. The human met Drax's gaze, her expression steady. "Would you like to continue?" she asked. Something in her tone made Zyron's scales shimmer. This wasn't survival. This was escalation. And for the first time since she'd entered the room, the academy felt uncertain. Somewhere deep inside, Zyron realized a truth that sent a chill through him. They hadn't brought a human to learn. They'd brought one to remind the galaxy of something it had forgotten. And the lesson had only just begun. Drax Mole didn't laugh anymore. His shoulders were still squared, his jaw still set, but something else had crept into his posture, tightness. Not fear. Not yet. The feeling of being watched. The arena reset with a smooth ripple, adaptive matter flattening into a neutral surface. Above, the holographic ceiling dimmed, as if the academy itself wanted to see better. Instructor Thryne's amber eyes moved from Drax to the human. "Name," he said. She didn't look surprised he asked now, after the first trial. As if she'd expected the room to finally remember she was a person. "Era Nox," she answered. "Species." "Human." No extra words. No pleading tone. No attempt to sound bigger than she was. Thryne nodded once. "Cadet Mole. You challenged. You choose the next parameters." Drax's eyes flickered. A chance to reclaim control. To reassert what everyone knew. His mouth curled into a grin that felt forced. "Trial 2, he announced loudly. "Mass handling under variable gravity." Some cadets murmured approval. A familiar test. Predictable. Measurable. It was the kind of thing Drax could win with muscle alone. He looked at Era with open contempt again, as if mocking her was a rope he could pull himself back up with. "You're quick," he said. "I'll give you that. But speed isn't power. And power is what matters in war." Era watched him like she was listening to a lecture she'd heard before. Then she nodded. Agreed. That response threw a few cadets off. Zyron saw heads tilt. Someone whispered, confused. Drax blinked. "You agree." "Power matters," Era said calmly. "It just depends on what kind." The arena shifted. 2 lifting platforms rose from the floor, each with a set of mass modules, compact blocks that could change effective weight through gravity manipulation. A display floated above each station, ready to measure total output. Thryne's voice cut through the tension. 3 lifts. Combined total. Gravity shifts without warning. Improper form earns penalty. Drax stepped onto his platform, rolling his neck like a predator preparing to bite. He gripped the mass module with both hands and hoisted it smoothly as the gravity spiked. The number on the display climbed fast. Cadets whistled. Zyron felt his stomach tighten. Drax was built for this. The bracket had dense fiber muscles and bone structure meant for high-gravity worlds. He lifted like gravity was merely a suggestion. First lift, brutal, clean, heavy. Second lift, heavier still, his arms shaking but holding. Third lift, his face twisted with strain as gravity surged, but he forced the module up, slammed it into the lock position, and roared like he'd conquered a planet. The display finalized. A massive total. Drax stepped back, breathing hard, eyes shining with triumph. "There," he said, pointing at the numbers. "That's what real cadets do." He didn't even bother lowering his voice. He wanted the humiliation to be public. Era approached her platform. Zyron noticed something that made his brow ridges lift. She didn't stare at the weight like it was an enemy. She stared at the floor. At her feet. At her hand position. At the joint angles. Like she wasn't thinking about the mass. Like she was thinking about the system. She rested a hand on the module. "Before I lift," she said, addressing Thryne, "is the goal maximum output, or operational efficiency?" A few cadets scoffed at the question. Drax laughed sharply. "It's lifting. You either can or you can't." Thryne didn't answer immediately. His eyes narrowed slightly. "The goal is performance under pressure." Era nodded as if that settled everything. She adjusted her stance. It looked wrong. Not wrong like clumsy. Wrong like unfamiliar. Her feet placed in a way Zyron hadn't seen in any academy technique manual. Her back angled differently. Her hands positioned to reduce strain. Zyron felt his scales tingle. Then she lifted. Not explosively. Not with brute force. With a smooth motion that looked easy. The display climbed. Gravity shifted upward midlift, trying to crush the module back down. Era didn't fight it. She moved with it. She bent, redirected, used the gravity spike as a pivot point, shifting her center of mass so the force became something she could ride instead of resist. Zyron's mouth went dry again. The module locked at the top. Her number was close to Drax's first lift. A ripple of surprise rolled through the room. Drax's grin faltered. "Lucky." Era reset, breathing slow, eyes focused. Second lift. This time the gravity surged higher, faster, like it was trying to catch her off guard. But Era's hands changed position before it spiked. She anticipated it. The module rose. The display climbed. And climbed. It passed Drax's second lift. The room made a sound like a single organism gasping. Drax took a step forward without realizing it. "No." Era lowered the module safely, set up for the third lift, and paused. Her eyes flicked to Drax. Not in arrogance. Not in cruelty. In calm certainty. "Are you sure," she asked quietly, "you want power?" Drax's nostrils flared. His pride was bleeding in front of the whole class. He had to stop it. "Lift," he spat. Era lifted. Gravity spiked to its highest setting. the kind of surge that normally made cadets drop the module and injure themselves. Several cadets leaned forward, expecting the human to fail. Era's knees flexed. Her arms tightened. She didn't lift straight up. She shifted sideways, using the angled handle joints, converting the vertical force into a controlled diagonal movement, letting her stronger leg muscles do most of the work. The module rose slowly, but it rose. Xiron realized something terrifying. She wasn't just strong. She was trained. Not academy trained. Different. The module locked at the top. The display finalized. Her combined total surpassed Drax. Not by a little. By enough to make excuses impossible. No one cheered. No one laughed. The room had fallen into the kind of silence that made your ears ring. Drax stared at the numbers. His jaw worked like he was chewing on rage. "That's impossible," he breathed. "Humans don't have that density." Era gently released the module and stepped back. "You're right," she said. "We don't." Then she tapped the side of her head. "But we've always had this." The words landed heavier than any mass module. Xiron saw it now, the shift in the room's emotional gravity. The cadets weren't just surprised. They were challenged. Because if a human could beat Drax Moll in a mobility trial and a mass trial, then the Academy's entire social order was built on a lie. Instructor Thryne's gaze moved across the room, like he was measuring reactions. Then he spoke. "Trial 3. Drax turned sharply. "No. I want a different test. Something fair." Thryne's eyes narrowed. "This is fair." Drax's voice rose. "Then make it combat." A murmur swept through the seats. Combat meant pain. It meant dominance made physical. It meant Drax could hurt her in front of everyone and call it training. Xiron felt his scales go cold. Era didn't flinch. She only asked, "Simulated, or live?" That question cut through the room like a blade. Even the cadets who hated her understood what it implied. Humans didn't ask that unless they were willing. Thryne's expression shifted, just slightly. "Simulated," he said. "But full contact." The arena reconfigured. Walls rose. Cover formed. A battlefield unfolded in seconds. Broken pillars, smoke vents, flickering light, tight corridors that forced close decisions. Thryne's voice lowered. "Objective. Secure the data core. One core. One winner." A holographic vault appeared at the far end. The core glowed within. Drax bared his teeth again. "There," he said. "Now we see what you really are." Era only tightened the strap on her glove and whispered something Xiron's translator barely caught. "Okay," she said softly. "Now we can learn." Thryne lifted his hand. "Begin." Drax charged. Era vanished. Not in speed. In strategy. And the moment she disappeared into the shifting battlefield, Xiron felt it in his bones. The class wasn't watching a human try to survive. They were watching the Academy get tested. The battlefield swallowed them whole. Smoke poured from vents along the walls, thick enough to blur vision and scramble depth perception. Lights flickered overhead, casting long, broken shadows across shattered pillars and narrow corridors. The data core pulsed faintly at the far end of the arena, a silent promise of victory. Drax Moll moved like a storm. He smashed through cover instead of going around it, his heavy steps shaking the ground. Every movement was loud, aggressive, meant to intimidate. His 4 eyes scanned constantly, hunting for motion. "She's hiding," he growled, more to himself than anyone else. "Running." That idea comforted him. Xiron leaned forward in his seat, heart pounding. Most cadets would hide against Drax. It was the only smart move. But Era hadn't hidden. She had disappeared. That was different. Drax reached the first corridor junction and paused, nostrils flaring. His species could sense heat changes through their skin. He waited for the telltale shift. Nothing. He snorted and charged left. Behind him, unseen by everyone except the overhead tactical display, a small icon moved quietly across the map. Era Nox wasn't running away. She was circling. Zyron's breath caught as he followed her path. She stayed near cover, never in the open, moving only when Drax's noise masked her own. When smoke thinned, she froze. When lights flickered, she advanced. She wasn't guessing. She was reading the environment. Drax reached the central chamber, the largest open space before the data vault. He stood tall, chest heaving, clearly pleased with himself. "Come out," he shouted. "I know you're scared." His voice echoed off the walls. No answer. The silence stretched. Then, clang. A sharp metallic sound rang from the opposite corridor. Drax spun, muscles tensing, and charged toward it. Zyron's eyes widened. It was a lure. Era had thrown a piece of broken plating across the floor, timed perfectly with a smoke vent release. The sound pulled Drax exactly where she wanted him. She slipped past him on the other side, staying low, her movements smooth and efficient. Her face was calm, focused, almost unreadable. A few cadets gasped softly as they realized what was happening. "She's controlling the fight," someone whispered. Zyron swallowed hard. "She's controlling him." Drax reached the dead end and snarled, realizing too late he'd been fooled. He slammed a fist into the wall, cracking the simulated stone. "Enough," he roared, turning back toward the core. "I'll crush you when I—" He stopped. Era stood between him and the vault. Not crouched. Not defensive. Waiting. For the first time since the trials began, Drax hesitated. "You think you can stop me?" he said, voice low and dangerous. "One hit. That's all it takes." Era tilted her head slightly, studying him the way one might study a puzzle. "I know," she said. "That's why I won't let you hit me." He lunged. Fast. Brutal. Every ounce of his mass and training poured into the charge. Era moved. Not backward. Sideways. She stepped into his momentum instead of away from it, pivoted at the last possible moment, and struck, not with power, but precision. Her elbow snapped into a joint cluster beneath his upper arm, a nerve convergence point Zyron had never seen taught at the academy. Drax howled as one of his arms went numb. Before he could recover, Era dropped low, swept his forward leg, and used his own weight to pull him off balance. He crashed into the ground hard enough to rattle the arena. Gasps erupted across the classroom. No one had ever put Drax Moll on the floor. He roared and rolled, swinging wildly. Era backed off instantly, keeping distance, eyes tracking every movement. "You fight like a coward." Drax snarled. "No," Era replied evenly. "I fight to win." She darted forward again, striking exposed points, joints, balance nodes, pressure zones. Every move disrupted him just enough to keep him angry and off rhythm. Zyron's mind raced. She wasn't stronger. She wasn't faster. She was smarter. Drax finally managed to clip her shoulder with a glancing blow. Era stumbled, grimacing as she rolled across the floor. A cheer started to rise. Then stopped. Because she was already back on her feet. Already repositioning. Already adapting. Pain slowed her for a moment. Then she adjusted her stance, compensating. Drax charged again, rage overriding caution. Era waited. At the last second, she triggered a smoke vent behind him with a manual override she'd accessed earlier. The sudden pressure shift threw his balance off by a fraction. That fraction was enough. She used it. Era struck his knee from the side, then his throat, not crushing, not lethal, but precise enough to disrupt airflow. Drax staggered, choking, his strength finally failing him. She stepped past him, reached the vault, placed her hand on the data core. The arena froze. Silence crashed down over the classroom like a physical force. The simulation dissolved, walls flattening, smoke clearing, the battlefield retreating into polished academy flooring. Drax lay on his back, chest heaving, eyes wide with disbelief. Era stood calmly beside the core, her breathing steady, her posture relaxed. Instructor Thrine stared at the display, then at Era. "Winner," he said slowly. "Cadet Era Nox." No cheers followed. No laughter. No insults. The room was utterly still. Zyron felt his scales shimmer uncontrollably. His mind struggled to catch up with what his eyes had seen. This wasn't luck. This wasn't a fluke. This was a demonstration. Era turned to face the class. Her gaze moved across them, not accusing, not triumphant. Just honest. You thought humans were weak, she said quietly. Because you measured strength one way. She paused. We survived on a world that tried to kill us every day. Not by being the biggest. Not by being the strongest. She tapped her chest lightly. But by learning faster than what hunted us. Drax finally pushed himself upright, refusing help, his pride shattered in front of everyone. Thryne took a step forward, his voice heavy with something Zyron had never heard from him before. Class dismissed. No one moved. Class, Thryne repeated, louder. Dismissed. They filed out slowly, stunned, whispering in low, uncertain tones. As Zyron passed Era, she met his eyes briefly. There was no arrogance there. Only resolve. And something else. Expectation. The Academy hadn't just witnessed a human winning. It had witnessed the beginning of a problem. For everyone who thought they understood the galaxy. The silence followed them out of the arena. Not the awkward kind that fades once people start talking again, but the heavy kind that sticks to your skin and refuses to let go. Cadets walked the corridor in clusters, whispering in low voices, glancing over their shoulders as if Era Nox might still be watching. Zyron walked alone. His thoughts wouldn't settle. Every rule he had grown up with, every assumption drilled into him at the Academy, felt cracked. Strength. Rank. Species hierarchy. All of it suddenly seemed incomplete. He spotted Era near a wall-mounted hydration unit, calmly rinsing her hands as if she'd just finished a routine exercise instead of dismantling the most feared cadet in her class. Before he could talk himself out of it, Zyron stopped. You could have humiliated him worse, he said quietly. Era looked at him, surprised, then offered a small smile. That wasn't the point. What was? She considered the question. Survival, she said. Long term. That answer unsettled him more than anything else. Word spread fast. By the next cycle, Era's name had reached every level of the Academy. Instructors whispered. Cadets argued. Betting pools collapsed overnight. Some called it a fluke. Others blamed faulty simulations. A few, the smartest ones, started watching humans differently. Drax Moll didn't return to class. Officially, he was under evaluation. Unofficially, everyone knew his dominance had shattered. And dominance, once broken, never truly came back. That should have been the end of it. It wasn't. 2 days later, the Academy announced a joint assessment. All species. All departments. One scenario. Live observers. Zyron felt dread coil in his stomach as he read the briefing. This wasn't routine training. This was politics. The kind that decided funding, influence, and which species got command positions in real conflicts. The test would simulate a first contact crisis, an unstable alien facility, failing systems, hostile conditions, limited time. Mixed species teams. Leadership determined by performance. When Zyron entered the briefing chamber, he saw Era standing near the center of the room, hands clasped behind her back. Calm. Focused. Unmoved by the stares. Instructor Thryne's voice carried across the chamber. Team assignments are final. Zyron's datapad buzzed. Team designation, Era Nox, lead. His breath caught. Lead. A human. Murmurs spread like static. A tall cadet from a high-gravity species stepped forward. Instructor, with respect. Denied, Thryne said instantly. You will follow assigned command. The simulation environment was massive. A derelict orbital structure hung above a dying star, systems failing in cascading waves. Radiation spikes. Structural breaches. Hostile drones. A nightmare scenario. The team assembled at the insertion point. 8 cadets. 6 species. No shared combat doctrine. Perfect chaos. We follow standard Vanguard protocol, one cadet said immediately. No, Era replied. The word wasn't sharp. It was final. Zyron watched tension spike. We don't have time to argue hierarchy, another snapped. That's exactly why we won't, Era said. Everyone state your strengths. Briefly. No one had ever opened like that. Confusion flickered across faces, but one by one they spoke. Shielding. Heavy weapons. Sensor analysis. Engineering. Medical. Era listened. Didn't interrupt. Didn't judge. Then she nodded. We split, she said. Objections exploded instantly. That's suicidal. We'll lose cohesion. Standard doctrine. Was written for standard enemies, Era said. This isn't one. She pulled up the station schematic and highlighted stress points, failure cascades, and drone patrol paths. This place is already collapsing. The enemy doesn't need to kill us. Time will. So we don't fight everything. She looked at Zyron. You're fast and quiet. You're with me. His scales flushed with shock. Me? I watched you, she said simply. You notice things. No one had ever said that to him before. The plan was risky, unorthodox, almost insulting to traditional tactics. It worked. While heavy units drew drones into controlled kill zones, Era and Zyron moved through maintenance corridors, bypassing combat entirely. She rerouted power flows with quick, efficient commands. He slipped through tight spaces to access override nodes no larger species could reach. When radiation surged, Era adjusted routes before alarms even finished sounding. How do you know? Zyron asked at one point, breathless. I don't, she replied. I predict. They reached the core with seconds to spare. Stabilized the station. Simulation complete. The observer's gallery erupted. Not in cheers. In disbelief. Back in the chamber, instructors argued openly. Data scrolled too fast for most cadets to follow. Performance metrics shattered previous records. Human-led team. 0 casualties. Maximum objective success. Era stood silently while the academy tried to catch up. Finally, Thrine raised a hand. Cadet Knox, he said. Explain your doctrine. She met his gaze evenly. We don't win by overpowering environments, she said. We win by understanding them faster than they change. A long pause followed. Thrine nodded slowly. The message was clear. Humans weren't just participants anymore. They were leaders. As cadets filed out, Zyron felt something shift inside him. Fear, yes. But also excitement. Possibility. The galaxy wasn't as fixed as he'd believed. And that scared a lot of powerful beings. From a high observation deck, unseen by the cadets below, representatives of several advanced species watched the replay in silence. One finally spoke. If humans can do this as students, the figure said, what will they do as commanders? No one answered. Because everyone knew the truth. This wasn't a demonstration. It was a warning. The academy changed quietly. Not with announcements. Not with banners or speeches. It changed in the way predators change when they realize the prey is watching back. Zyron noticed it first in the training halls. Cadets no longer laughed when humans walked by. Some avoided eye contact. Others studied them with a new, unsettling focus. The strongest stopped boasting. The smartest started listening. Era Knox became a subject of debate across the entire Vanguard network. Some called her an anomaly. Some called her a threat. Some called her the future. None of them were entirely wrong. A week after the joint assessment, an emergency alert rippled through the academy. Not a drill. Not a simulation. A real signal. An outpost at the edge of contested space had gone dark. Communications lost. Defense grids disabled. Unknown hostiles detected. A coalition task group was assembling, but the nearest response window was closing fast. The Academy was asked for assistance. For observers. For analysts. For recommendations. Instructor Thrine stood before a sealed chamber, surrounded by senior staff and off-world representatives. His voice was heavy. "We can send a conventional response," he said. "Or we can send insight." The room fell quiet. One by one, eyes turned toward a single name on the display. Era Knox. Zyron sat in the back of the chamber, heart pounding as Era stood alone at the center. Calm as ever. Focused. "You're still a cadet," one representative said sharply. "This is not a classroom." "No," Era agreed. "It's worse." That answer carried weight. She stepped forward and projected the outpost schematics. Damage patterns. Power failures. Signal blackouts. "This wasn't an attack," she said. "It was a test." Murmurs rippled. The hostiles didn't destroy the station. They disabled it. They wanted to see how long it would take for help to arrive. How we prioritize. How we respond. "And you know this how?" another demanded. "Because humans do the same thing," Era replied. "When we don't understand something yet." Silence followed. She laid out her plan quickly. Not a strike. Not a show of force. A conversation. The Academy Task Group deployed under heavy oversight. Era wasn't in command, not officially. But everyone watched her. Listened when she spoke. Adjusted when she advised. Zyron joined her team, hands shaking as they approached the darkened outpost. The unknown vessels appeared on sensors soon after. Angular. Unmarked. Silent. Weapons powered. Tension thickened the bridge. "Open a channel," Era said. "That violates protocol," the comm officer warned. "Protocol assumes hostility," Era replied. "We're here to test a different assumption." The channel opened. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then a voice spoke. Layered. Artificial. Curious. "You adapt faster than projected," it said. Era didn't smile. "You underestimated curiosity." A pause. "We expected fear." "We ran out of that a long time ago," she said. The exchange lasted minutes. No threats. No ultimatums. Just information, shared cautiously, intelligently. The hostiles withdrew. Not defeated. Satisfied. When the task group returned, the Academy erupted. Arguments. Fear. Accusations of recklessness. Thrine silenced them all with a single raised hand. "Cadet Knox did not break doctrine," he said. "She expanded it." The decision came later that cycle. Humans would no longer be observers. They would be partners. Zyron stood beside Era on the Academy terrace, watching distant stars burn quietly in the void. "You changed everything," he said. Era shook her head. "No. We reminded them." "Of what?" She looked out into the dark. "That intelligence isn't a trait. It's a habit. And habits spread." Below them, new cadets arrived. Humans among them. Nervous. Hopeful. Watching the Academy with the same uncertainty Era once had. This time, the silence that followed them wasn't mocking. It was respectful. Far beyond the Academy, civilizations adjusted their models. Recalculated probabilities. Rewrote assumptions that had stood unchallenged for centuries. One truth echoed through every simulation. Humans didn't dominate the galaxy. They redefined it. And this was only the beginning.